In this lecture, we're going to continue working with the WordPress Customizer API. There are 5 fields we'll be creating that will do the following. The first 2 fields is for these 2 button icons on this menu. We'll let the user decide if they want these 2 buttons to be available. The next option is the text for this copyright text on the footer. The last 2 options will allow users to select the pages for the terms of service and privacy policy links. So before we get started with the customizer, I'm going to make the search form in the header functional. I'm going to open up the header in search form template. Look for the search form inside the header template. You'll notice right away these 2 forms are completely different in appearance and markup, so I won't be using the function for grabbing this template. Instead, I'm just going to copy and paste some of the PHP parts into this template. There are only 3 things we really need to make dynamic. That would be the action for the form, the value for the input, and lastly make this text translatable. Alright, let's get started with the customizer. I'm going to make a file inside the customizer folder named miss.php, which is short for miscellaneous. Define a function named jumiss customizer section. This function will accept the WP customize object. From the functions file, I'm going to include this file. The very last step is to call this function from the main customizer function. I know that was a lot to do, but trust me, you should always do this as it'll help you keep things organized. I've been in that situation where I would stuff my code in the least amount of files possible, and it was always a pain to maintain. Just like last time, we'll be using the 3-step process to create these new settings. The first step is to actually create the database values using the add setting method. The ID for the first setting is juheaderShowSearch, and the default value will be yes. I'm going to copy and paste this 4 more times and update the names for each of these. Feel free to pause the video so you can have what I have. I have juheaderShowCart, where the default value is also yes. The jufooter copyright text will have its default value to the original copyright text. The jufooter TOS page and jufooter privacy page will both be set to 0. These will be assigned to pages later on. That right there is step 1. We have all our database settings ready. The next step is to create a section that will hold all our controllers. Call the add section method and give it the ID of juMissSection. The title will be Udemy Miss Settings with a priority of 30. The last step is to create the controllers for each setting. The first controller will be a standard HTML input field, so we'll be using the WP Customize Control class to help us out. As usual, I'm going to pass in the normal stuff. There are a couple of things I should highlight. The ID will be juheaderShowSearch input. I will make sure this is assigned to the miss section and make its settings correspond to the correct settings value we created earlier. Instead of a text input field, I want to create a checkbox. I will set the type to checkbox. The values we use for the checkbox can be set by adding the key choices. This key's value will be an array of possible values available. We only have one value, and that is yes. The name of the key is the actual value that will be compared to check if the settings matches the checkbox. The value of the item is human readable text next to the checkbox so the user knows what the checkbox is for. Let's refresh the customizer and we should now see our section and the checkbox being displayed. As you can see, the checkbox is already checked because the default value for this setting is yes. I want you to do the same for the cart button for a moment. While you're at it, try creating the copyright text controller. It's just a text field, nothing complex. Pause the video and try it out. If you didn't get it, that's fine. It's really simple. I'm going to copy and paste the previous controller twice and only change 2 things. I'm going to change the label and the settings key for the cart button. For the copyright text, I'm going to remove the choices and type keys. By default, the type will always be text. Like last time, you'll need to change the label and the settings key. That should do it for the two buttons and the copyright text. The only fields we have to create are the fields for the pages. I'm going to paste this one more time and remove the choices key, and update the label and settings keys appropriately. This time, I'm going to change the type to drop-down pages. This is a special type we can set. WordPress will generate a drop-down menu and set the options to all pages that are published. The value of each option would be the page ID, which we can use later. This is exactly what we want, since the terms of service and privacy policy will be separate pages. If you don't have a page in mind, then you should set the settings value to 0, so WordPress won't set a page by accident. This control is for the terms of service. I'm going to copy this and set the settings and label for the privacy policy now. Just like that, we should now have 5 controllers in the Miss section. Refresh the customizer and you should see something similar to what I have. Because this is a testing environment, I'm going to set the 2-page drop-down controllers to some random pages. Make sure to save the changes. The last thing we need to do is make these changes reflect on the theme. Open up the header template and look for the search and cart buttons. I'm going to surround these in conditional statements like so. The condition will check if the value for both these mods are set to yes. Make sure to update the values in both these functions to the appropriate setting. Test the customizer really quick and see if everything's working correctly. The buttons should appear and disappear depending if the box is checked or not. I'm going to close the header template and open up the footer template. Let's get to work. For the copyright text, I'm just going to echo out the setting. Next, I'm going to wrap the links in conditional statements and check if the settings have a value. Keep in mind, by default, these settings default values are 0. This is also equivalent to false, so we don't need to perform any checks besides what's returned. Replace the links and use the permalink function. Template tags can be used outside the loop. However, there is one condition. You must pass in the ID of the poster page you'd like to retrieve information from. Most template tags have this as their first parameter. Let's do that now. Call the getThemeMod function and get the appropriate setting for each link. If you don't pass in an ID and you're using this function outside of the loop, then you'll receive an error. Let's check out the site now. Save any changes you made and exit out of the customizer. Make sure the links in the footer work. After confirming so, then you're all done. Let's take a moment to explore our theme. When we first started, we had a bunch of links and styles and the content was broken. Now we have a fully functioning theme.